Hi, welcome to Mature Matters. My name is Cindy Gray and I'm your host. Today I have with me Ruth Ann Carter. This is our second visit and our second discussion about memoir writing. Hi, Ruth.
Hi.
Well, we were discussing memoirs before and we just ran out of time. There's just so much to talk about. It's such a wonderful topic. What advice would you have for people who've never written a memoir? How do they start? What can they do?
Well, they could get a notebook. Probably having lines in it would be good, loose leaf. Or I have the kind I like. It's spiraled on the end.
Okay.
And I just keep getting new ones.
Okay.
And they have lines. And get a pen that's comfortable for you to write
One
with.
that really flows.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some people still love the kind where you put the ink in them, and you want it to be comfortable in your hand so that you can write without stopping.
Okay.
And open it up to a blank page and say, my first writing practice, Natalie Goldberg uses it as a suggestion in her book, I remember.
And start with that trigger thought.
Yes. I remember and write for 15 minutes without stopping.
Anything that pops in your head.
Yes.
Okay.
And do not stop. Do not go back. Do not cross out.
Okay.
Don't worry about your punctuation, spelling, or grammar.
Right.
All of that on another day can be cleaned up
Okay.
or corrected or made more permanent.
Right. Or not. You can just leave it as it is.
Yes.
Okay.
And as she says in her directions, lose control
Right.
and write for 15 minutes and then stop and read it
Okay.
and say, my goodness,
Wow.
look what I wrote.
Right. Now you've referred to Natalie Goldberg, and we discussed her in the previous interview. She's written this book called Writing Down the Bones, Freeing the Writer Within. Again, it's Natalie Goldberg. And in this, and you've been very inspired by this,
Yes.
everything about this woman. She's
Yes.
just an inspiration for you. She says in here that the directions are to keep your hand moving, as you said. Don't cross things out. Don't worry about the spelling and so forth.
Don't go back.
Don't go back. Although you're going back in your mind.
Yes.
But you don't go back in your writing.
Because if you go back in your writing, another part of you is taking over. Natalie Goldberg calls it the editor.
Okay.
Oh, I misspelled.
Right.
Oh, my handwriting isn't so great. Oh,
Yeah.
I shouldn't have written that. That's why you don't go back, and that is freeing the editor.
Okay.
Not freeing the editor, going away from the editor in you that says, oh, I shouldn't.
Okay. Now, we were talking too about trigger phrases, key words, things to help people get started, basically. Some of the things are describe a grandparent, or what is your first memory? How about who are the people you have loved? Those are all interesting. She says too, you can write about swimming, the stars, the most frightened you've ever been. Mm-hmm. That would be a good one.
And if you were going to write about the people you have loved, you could, instead of all of them at one time, you could use the phrase, I loved,
Okay.
which takes you back in memory.
Okay.
And for instance, if I were going to do it, the minute I hear I loved, I would write about my grandmother,
Okay.
who I dearly loved and who loved me.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can, if you buy the book, she has suggestions.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say you want something yourself and you are in your room and you really want to write about your room, your bedroom,
Okay.
your favorite room in
Your
the house.
kitchen, your porch.
Whichever. You can just say, I'm going to write about my kitchen.
And as an exercise to get the inner writer flowing.
Sure.
to start working and pulling out your ability to describe.
Yes.
Okay.
And if you're writing about your kitchen, it is going to bring memories of a really fantastic dish you made and your children didn't like it.
Okay. Or company that was
Yes.
there, or holidays,
And
perhaps.
the holidays is
Right.
a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And the kitchen is where the holiday is involved. And
Okay.
it leads to remembering an incident when you put the dish on the table, whatever.
And the table collapsed and the sweet peas went on the floor. Yeah.
Or I had my new best dishes out.
Right.
All
Yeah.
memories that come.
Okay.
And then when you have a book full of memories, there are things you can do with them.
Mm-hmm.
You can say, my memoirs, book 1.
And put the date on it. You want to keep it dated.
Yes.
Right.
And go on.
Okay.
And you just, a word or a phrase is all you need. My bedroom,
And it
my
seems like
kitchen.
it could stir up memories that you really hadn't even meant to start writing about, but you
Right.
start connecting with.
Right.
I know in some things that I've written in the past, I've written about my dining room table, which was my parents' table, and it was my mother's table. And I think about all the memories that are on that table. And the energy that comes off that table is very historical for me, very familial, and familiar and familial both. And I think about, I used to do homework on that table when I was a kid. You know, when you got in trouble, you were at that table, you know, and you were at the table. People used to play cards on that table. A lot of gossip was on that table, gravy, tears, you name it was spilled on that table.
Yes.
Yeah. And if I wouldn't think about that, it's almost like that's the metaphor for the family memory. That's what I would want to write about.
And I think your children or grandchildren would want to know that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Speaking of
Because
that,
by
go ahead.
freeing the writer within, you're going to tell children or your descendants
Mm-hmm.
things that are from you, as you said in our first session, from the heart. And
Yeah.
they will love them and really know how important those were to you.
And these are things that maybe might not even come up in conversation normally.
Right,
So,
because you're writing for yourself. But
Okay.
when you write for yourself, why wouldn't your children want to know that?
yes. Yeah, and grandchildren.
See, that's why she's so important to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of her trigger questions in here is write about books that have changed your life. Well, you'd write about this book.
Yes, in a minute.
Yeah, yeah. Huh.
And another thing that struck me as I was getting ready for the interview, you know, we go to school, and she talks about this. She said she just read poetry and books through all of her high school and college, and upon graduation realized that nobody would hire her to swoon over literature and poetry.
Okay.
And she did other things, and finally she got to writing down the bones.
Mm-hmm.
But what so struck me about it is we, our generation, have had formal education. But she is giving you a technique where you can get to the essence that you want by yourself in a comfortable situation and with something you can do every day. She writes about how she and her girlfriends who love to write would go to coffee shops in Ann Arbor and sit there all day and write and read to each other, and nobody bothered them. So as they drank coffee, you know.
Right.
And
that's quite a bond. Yeah. It's very therapeutic
Yes.
technique, I would believe.
I believe so too.
Yeah. And then now the Farmington Hills Library has courses in this often, right? It's a walk-in, or what do they
A
offer?
drop-in.
Drop-in?
The Farmington Hills Library memoir writing aspect of their senior outreach. And I compliment the Farmington Hills Library. I'm so glad I volunteered there because their outreach on many different levels is so good, really outstanding.
It's a beautiful library,
Isn't
too.
it?
Yeah.
and the people in there who have created the shall we say, curriculum, are so caring, and they've done so much for the people of Farmington Hills.
I imagine that there's libraries and resources throughout the whole country that people can just investigate, and they can meet all sorts of people in those investigations, maybe find some circumstances that could help facilitate starting to write their memoirs. But they really need just pen and paper and their mind, their heart.
Yes.
And to sit down and start writing the things that touch you and have moved you in your life.
And if they are so inclined, Natalie Goldberg's book, you can purchase it.
Sure.
She also has written several others, and if writing is something that you love and are interested in, you can read on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. What was I going to ask you? So journals, how is it different than journaling? Is it similar?
Well, in journaling, what if you didn't want to write memories? What if you wanted to write
like recent experiences, basically, or kind of like a diary of what happened today, sort of thing? Okay.
Memoirs is memories.
Okay.
And so I think that's probably, I'm sure her technique would work in journaling.
Yeah, I know it's funny because I go in fits and starts where I journal for a while, then I skip it and I journal. And it's neat to go back and find your old journals because they become memoirs.
Yes.
You know, because they're written at that point in time.
Yes.
And
Julie Solomon of the main library, in her class, she read Writing Down the Bones and then went on to read other books about memoir writing in the library. And she blends things from those books along with Writing Down the Bones.
different techniques.
Yes.
Okay.
And so there's that's the nice part of it. It's very fluid. There's no hard and fast. Right. Just don't go back, don't stop.
Okay. Yeah.
Keep writing for your time.
Yeah.
And
there's an author named Julia Cameron, and she's written some things, and she calls them the morning pages. And in a way, it's similar to this, where you sit down first thing in the morning and you write X amount of pages, is what she defines it at. And it's the artist within, is what she calls it. And that's a very inspiring set of works from her too, and I think it inspires people to reach a creative part of themselves that may not have a form of expression. Have you different applications? Have you come across different applications? You said you taught in the previous interview. You said you taught sixth graders.
Yes.
You've taught at Baptist Manor.
One of the sixth graders in the class was the daughter of a riding friend of mine, a horse friend. Those were the days when I was still riding, and she came home and told her mother about it and said, I'm going to use this when they assign a class paper.
Oh, okay.
And so I thought that was great. And the two women social workers who came in to the class where I was subbing for Julie Solomon at the library.
You mentioned them in the last interview. Okay.
They took it and they wanted to use it with their volunteers who visit lonely shut-ins, etc. So I see that as another use for it.
All right. Well, not to jump too far ahead, but I just feel compelled to ask you, we've discussed the benefit of this for veterans.
Yes, I would very much like to see veterans have access to this.
Okay.
If I may tell you, a well-published writer by the name of Maxine Hong Kingston in San Francisco. I don't know that she used Writing Down the Bones, but she did start a writing group of veterans that probably were Vietnam veterans and maybe the Gulf War. But she was on Bill Moyer's show now, and she brought 3 of them with her and had them read, and what they wrote was wonderful. It was short, like these shorter things, and I thought, wouldn't that be wonderful here in our area to offer memoir writing? to veterans.
Okay, well, maybe that's something that could evolve in the future.
It would be.
And
good.
again, we're on Mature Matters. We're speaking with Ruth Ann Carter, and my name is Cindy Gray. And I want to invite the viewers to contact the studio if you have any ideas for anyone that you'd like to have interviewed on the show. It should be a subject that helps seniors in general, that seniors would be interested in. So any ideas that you want to share or people you might want to suggest to be interviewed, please give the studio a call. My own website is www.cindygray.biz. That's gray with an A.biz. And we're talking with Ruth Ann Carter. I wanted to share something that I came across. It was written by Velma Wallace, and she's an Alaskan Indian woman who wrote a book called Two Old Women, a fascinating novel, by the way, of two old women that were left behind by their tribe in the Alaskan wilderness in the winter a long time ago. And the tribe took off and weren't able to hunt and gather and do what they needed to do. They returned to the original location, and these two old women, if you will, had been thriving. They had been hunting, they built their place, they were it's a neat story. But in this story, she says stories are gifts given to an elder by a younger person. Often today, because many of our youth are occupied by television and fast-paced modern living, this gift isn't given or received. She said maybe tomorrow a few of today's generation who were sensitive enough to listen to their elders' wisdom will have the traditional word-of-mouth stories living within their memory. Perhaps tomorrow's generation will also yearn for these stories, so as they may better understand their past, their people, and hopefully themselves. Now, Ruth, she talks about word-of-mouth stories from the memory, but memoirs are word-of-mouth but put onto paper. So it's a really good way of tracking things or securing them for future generations.
And the more you do it, the more you will remember that is important.
Okay.
I believe.
Kind of like an onion with the different layers. I think once you start peeling off the first layer or two, the essence is deep down, but other memories can be interlinked. And if we don't start with memory, 2 through 5, we can never get to the 10th one, right. That sort of thing.
Like that quote we started with, trust in what you love, continue to do it, and it will take you where you need to go. Mm-hmm. What you love being writing in this instance.
Okay, yeah. Or horses, too. You've spoken about having horses, right? We have a lot in common, by the way. I've always wanted a horse. That's one of my life dreams. I don't know where I'd put it at this point, but I'd love to have one. And you are a retired court reporter.
Yes.
I'm a retired court reporter.
Yes.
And I may add that when we first got together to talk about this interview, we had about a 3-hour conversation on the phone. The wires were hot. I was on a traditional phone, so I didn't blow out any satellites. But we had a wonderful conversation about court reporting. And I think that would be an interesting topic, too, for someday's interview.
Yes. In doing court reporting, love of writing is involved because you are hearing new words all the time, and you love the written word.
Okay.
And I think you to really enjoy being one, because it's hard work.
Yeah, that would be a great subject.
But I would love to talk to you about it.
Okay. I have my old stenograph machine.
So do I.
Yeah, we could bring that and show it to people. I know a lot of people are often curious about that. When you say that you were a court reporter or whatever, they go, oh, you were in court and you did this. They always do the finger wiggle, and it's like, yeah, I was just doing that for 15 years. I did that. But yeah, I've thought about writing memoirs of my court reporting days. I would call it Off the Record, Memoirs of a Court Reporter. I've already started it, but I didn't get very far. I'm sure you'd have a lot of memories about it, too. Well, we're going to close for today. I really appreciate your time and sharing of information. Again, this is Ruth Ann Carter. She's involved with the Farmington Hills Library on 12 Mile. I'm Cindy Gray. And feel free to contact SWAC Studios with any information about some suggested programs for Mature Matters. We'd be willing to listen to your ideas and perhaps take them on board. So I appreciate everybody watching, and have a great day.